What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of How to Human. It has been a while. I know. But a quick backstory. I was sick for most of May with like a sore throat, congestion, and that whole thing. And then the kids finished school. A lot of you guys I know have children, and school's done. Summer has started, activities and whatnot. That's all I'm going to give you. That's all you really need to know. Just know that the podcast is back. And this is one of those episodes that I wanted to do. So when I started the show, I wanted to do interviews, which I've done a handful, probably half a dozen, I believe, or more, which I recommend you go back to listen to if you haven't already. If you're watching this on YouTube, I appreciate the 20-something of you, 4 or 5, I think, 6 that are subscribed. Hit the subscribe button if you want to watch the videos. If not, you can always catch these on audio. But I wanted to include other versions of the show on the show, if that makes sense, and I'll explain. So the interviews are my favorite. I love having really good conversations with people who are doing great things, have done great things, or are working towards whatever their passions are or whatever their projects for life are. I also want to have a little bit of these solo, and that was a little loud, hopefully not for you guys. I want to have some of these loud. I want to have some of these solo episodes where it's just kind of me building a relationship with you guys, the listeners. And these will be, I don't know what I'm going to call the segments, but they're going to be solo episodes where we talk about a particular topic when it comes to entrepreneurship or even self-development. And I know it sounds kind of weird when it comes to just a guy on the internet, but it seems like, a lot of people turn to somebody online to be what I used to call a digital mentor, and I still do. I grew up in a place where you didn't have a lot of people around you that would give you the best advice, or I could even give you advice on things you were interested in. And, you went online. Luckily, we live in a world where you can go and search for somebody who is doing something you want to do or has done something you want to do, and you can learn from them. Even if it's not directly, it's through their content, their podcasts, their videos, and what have you. And then I want to get my wife on here as well. Her and I, we did a podcast for a while during the pandemic and the lockdowns, the government lockdowns, as I like to call them. And it was fun. It was great. And we always have really good conversations. We have couch conversations almost every night on the couch, when we're kind of just winding down. And they're some of the best conversations I've ever had. I didn't need to have a camera and a co-host or a guest to have these conversations. Her and I just were on a very similar wavelength, and they're fun. And anyway, we kind of want to bring that concept back and just be a little bit more intentional about who we talk to or what we're talking about. Before, it was much more free-flowing, and it was kind of like guided towards parents and other things like that, kind of current events. But, she works in a very high level. I still have a little bit of congestion too. High-level corporate life. She loves it. She's one of those people who I'm actually kind of jealous of now that I'm in my early 30s, because as most of you that are listening that might be entrepreneurs or might be, even if you're not a real described entrepreneur, there's something in you that wants to do something else, right? You want to do something beyond your 9 to 5 or your job. And I think that's great. But I do have jealousy from time to time of these people like my wife who loves what they do. They've found a corporation or a company that they want to grow with or grow within. And they find a role within that company that really highlights what they're really good at. And for her, she's grown into this role of basically guiding other teams in this company and being close to, if not really on what would be, I guess, considered a leadership team. And a lot of this lingo I know I get from her, and I've learned from other people that I follow that talk about business, because I haven't worked in a corporate setting. Probably it's been over 10 years. I think 21, 22 was the last time I had an actual corporate job where I had to go to an office, or I had to go to, even if it was like retail. In my late teens, the first early 1-2 years of my 20s, I worked retail management. And then after that, I had a couple of office jobs, and then entrepreneurship, went full blast, and that's what I wanted to do forever, even when I was 9, 10. And I know a lot of you guys are also the same way. You're thinking about, man, how long ago did I want to become an entrepreneur? For some people, it's like, well, just a couple of years ago, I had a family, maybe I had my job kind of capped out, and I want to do something else. And for others, it's when I was 9, 10, I remember saying, I want to be a business owner. I want to have a business. I want to do my own thing. So anyhow, this is going to be one of those short kind of solo episodes, 15 to 30 minutes max. I like the length of that because I've read and researched that that's the general commute for those of you that are driving somewhere. If you have a driving job, you're on the road all the time. If you're on the treadmill at the gym, this is kind of the stuff where you can come back and hopefully revisit it. I have certain shows that I'll listen to over and over and over again because the host talks about a particular subject, or they break down a particular concept, or they put together a really good framework for something. And I don't even know how to describe it, but it's not like I'm I'm sure you listening too, you consider yourself being on the intelligent side. You think you have a really good propensity for figuring things out and working through things, but you have to listen to things sometimes over and over again. I just finished Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and then I started the Infinite Game, I believe it's called, and I listened to it once through and immediately started it again because there were so many good concepts in that book about business and entrepreneurship, mostly business, business culture, capitalism, and a bunch of cool concepts. And it's one of those things, and I love when you can go back and listen to it. So the same thing goes to the podcast, this and others. I hope you guys find nuggets of information you want to come back and listen to. But let's get into some of the meat and potatoes of this. So that's a little bit of the introduction. And I wanted to kind of talk about obstacles and obstacle overcomes. So to give more of a context and to build that rapport that I want with the listener, pause real quick. Also, when I do the interviews, and since I started out of the gate with interviews, if you don't know who I am or what I've done or why you should even listen to me, it's hard to build any kind of reputation or rapport with the listener if you don't really know about me, right? So starting out of the gate with the guests is cool, it's fun, especially if you know the guest, but you might not really know me, or maybe you've heard us chat before. So that's why I think these are really important in order to build a relationship with the listener of the show. I want you guys and gals to know where I'm coming from, what I've done, what I could help you with, or what you could even help me with. And we'll get into that later on in the show. But when it comes to an obstacle, you could be somebody who's working at a job and wants to continue the job, but wants to just do something extra because you need to generate more income. And I hope that a lot of you guys just love generating income and being go-getters, hustlers that want to make more money for your family, or even if it's just for you, because money is a really good tool. People have this weird thing about money. And actually, I'll shout out one of my favorite new podcasts that I've been listening to called Money Mondays. Entrepreneur podcast and a lot of great guests and insights on business and entrepreneurship. But, the people that are like, all you want to do is make money, I really can't vibe with you, because I when you say that, I take it as somebody that doesn't really want to do a whole lot in life. And I don't necessarily mean with their life, although you could also interpret it that way, but with life, because if you have dollars to deploy towards things, causes, people, communities, groups, whatever, you get to do a whole lot more for life in the world as a whole. If you're somebody that doesn't really want to acquire a lot of money or wealth, you're really not looking to do a whole lot. You might say, well, you can go volunteer your time, you can go do this. There's plenty of things you can do. Personally, if you don't really want to go after it and make a lot of money and help others make a lot of money, then you really don't have these really high expectations of yourself or of what your abilities are in the world. That's just my 2 cents. So right now, I'm traveling back and forth from the Central Texas area to Houston to still work with clients that I work with doing all kinds of stuff. Well, one's, it's a media stuff when it comes to podcasting. Another is a service-based company. Another one's a product where we're launching stuff or selling stuff online and taking them from an established brick and mortar company to somebody who never sold anything online and now is doing really well online, and we're trying to scale that. So the benefits of that for me are not really the 3-hour drive as a whole, but I am getting to listen to a bunch of audiobooks, and I'm going to start breaking some of these down on the podcast, because I remember when I had my first business, I've had a lot of little small side hustle businesses, but when I had my own real brick and mortar business, I remember reading about a lot of these concepts briefly, right? When you're in your early 20s, if you've done this before, you're starting something and you're just going so deep on the thing that you want to grow it, you want to scale it, you want to make sure that you're doing the best that you can to make it succeed, that you don't really spend a lot of time doing anything else. And for me in my early 20s, and maybe you guys can relate, I didn't really hang out with a ton of friends. It was just a small group of people that was helping me do this thing that I would hang out with. I didn't play video games, right? I didn't go and do any vacationing. I had people that would go, whether it was spring break time, and keep in mind, we're in our 20s, so I guess maybe they were in college. I was not. And they would go to spring break, or they'd go on vacation or whatever, and they would do a lot of leisurely things, and that was just never my speed, and it's still really not. I wanted to be doing something that I just really was enjoying and feeling fulfillment from, and it was never those leisurely things. So no video games, no traveling, no anything really except working on the thing. So that meant reading also, right? I was going to get to that. I would listen to podcasts and I'd watch videos, but I just couldn't sit down and read a book. And I wasn't really big on audiobooks yet, ironically, even though I was listening to podcasts. So now I'm kind of going back and revisiting some of these books and authors who I remember reading excerpts from, or just a little, blurb about. And it's been fantastic. It's been about 2 months now, and I've gone through a ton of books, and some that I've already read and just reread, and some new ones that I only skimmed through or got spark notes, basically on. And it's helping, further understand like what I want to do and how I want to do it. And I know a lot of people who are stuck where I was 10 years ago, and they're now in their 30s and still haven't really progressed very, very far. Or they were never thought like this in their 20s, and now that they're in their 30s, they're starting to barely, for the first time, think a little bit differently. And it could be because of the things we've gone through, with the governmental lockdowns and all this crazy corruption in politics, which is another one of my passions. And I almost don't want to talk about it on here, but I probably will, because a lot of people have this like, oh, this aversion about talking about those subjects. But in reality, look, like, we're going to disagree on stuff, and that's all right. I think that that's one of the great things about being where we are, is that we can have these conversations, we can disagree to a point where we walk away and we're like, I don't agree with that person on that, but man, they're really good at X, Y, and Z, and I would love to keep in communications and keep a relationship with them, because we can further our causes with each other outside of how we see certain things politically or just, worldly, globally, whatever. But anyhow, so the books that I was reading, right? A lot of great concepts in those books. And when I get to my destinations and I talk to these people, whether it's the business owners or even acquaintances when I'm traveling back to Houston, it's fun to have these talks with them, because I can confidently say that, whether it's a friend and acquaintance or somebody who is running a business, doesn't matter. They're very similar conversations, except the business owner has a better understanding of some of the things I talk about, or that they might ask me, right? So if they ask me a question about, let's just say something about marketing or their website or whatever, or social media, I could give them a pretty confident answer about what direction to take, what we should look at, what we should study, or what should they pay attention to, right? Versus the friend, a good friend, or even just an acquaintance who is just now starting to think about these things, and it kind of goes over their head when I give them a reply. So either way, it's fun to talk to them, but what I'm finding is that it doesn't matter who it is, the entrepreneur, the friend, the good longtime friend, or just an acquaintance, they're stuck, and they have these obstacles that they can't seem to overcome. And a lot of the time, this is a reoccurring theme, is that they don't see maybe what I see in them, right? Or they don't see the abilities that I see in them. When I give them my answer, I'm like, oh, I think you could X, Y, Z. And this is just me being an observer of them. And then based off their question, like, well, you could do this and you could do that, and you understand this pretty well, and you could break that down. And then remember, this is all with the idea of, how do I monetize my skill? How do I monetize my abilities? How do I monetize the things I know, the people, that I work with, whatever? How do I better help them, so I can help myself just level up a little bit in life, to live a little bit more comfortably, have a little bit more cushion in my spending, in my savings, investing. And the obstacle overcome here for a lot of people is just seeing that first thing, that thing that means that you can, right? That tells you that you can. And I don't know how to break this down for people, other than you just got to start with, and this is funny to go back to the book, I wasn't intending on doing this, but start with why you want to do that thing, right? Why do you want to make more money? Like, why do you want to get into entrepreneurship? Like, why do you think that your job isn't enough of a fulfillment for you to live your life and level up, year after year as you grow in that company? And I can understand some jobs really don't lend themselves for growth that way. And that's kind of just the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to level up from that job or that particular spot in your career to somewhere else. And a lot of times, even that is like, how do I get a resume? How do I really get a good resume going? And some of you might be thinking, well, that's all common sense. Google it, OpenAI it, go figure it out. But I'm having a lot more, I guess, compassion for those that don't have the entrepreneurial mind or have had it from an early age, because it is really hard and overwhelming, especially now with social media, when you see a lot of people who are supposedly winning, right? They're doing a lot of great things. They're on their yachts, they're on their private jets and their cars. If you don't know that 99% of that is fake, you're already really hard to help at this point. But nonetheless, I tell these friends and acquaintances that, let's just break it down, man. Like, what do you want to do? So the obstacle to start with, and you might be in these shoes now, is just figuring out what it is that you feel like you're really good at. It could literally be, I'm good at communicating, right? I'm really good at expressing concepts and formulas or frameworks to people. Well, somebody's probably asking you like, hey man, like, how do you how would you do this? People have probably asked you for your advice on something, and if you're really good at communicating that, maybe look into, really, you know what, I really have these good communication styles about X, Y, Z, and then figure out how to monetize that, right? And that's super surface level, but I also want to say, go read some books, right? Go take some Udemy courses. And if you're not familiar with Udemy, I think it's a fantastic platform where you can buy courses and yeah, really, I think that's the only thing I use it for. There are probably other things, but you can take, classes and courses of sorts on there created by either content creators or successful, business owners or what have you, teachers that go on there and create classes. In the last 2 months, I've probably done 5 or so marketing, SEO, and just digital Udemy classes, and they've helped tremendously. And it's crazy because one of the concepts I heard recently was that most people, you learn the most about a thing in the first like 10 or 20 hours of learning. And then the unfortunate part is that it takes a lot of people a long time, days, months, years to even start that first, 10 hours, 20 hours. So when it comes to the thing you want to learn, go find a Udemy course. That's like the simplest thing. Like you could go so many places and find like a good a person to follow about a subject. You could Google like, marketing leaders or real estate leaders or whatever, but just go to Udemy, search through the highest rated or the newest ones with the best reviews. Look at the video, the introduction video that they have there, and then just see if this is like somebody who has a good communication style, and then learn about the thing and get over that obstacle of like, well, I don't know what I'm good at. I don't know what I could possibly offer the market or I could offer the world. A lot of people they stay stuck. They constantly stay stuck in this, like, I don't know how. And they don't even take the first step into actually going and just type it into Google. That's it. That's all you got to do. Google the phrase and then go down that rabbit hole. That's what I did when I was 20, 21. If you're in your early 30s, you're 30, 31 listening to this, or however old you are, it doesn't really matter. Just go do that and then start reading what you get. You can't trust everything on the internet. I know that. You all know that. But at least you could start with that. Now, I'm going to go through a couple of other bullet points that I have laid out here, which I typically don't do. I do very free-flowing conversations typically, but this is something I want to make sure to hit. And a personal story that I can have is just one example of one of the things that I tried, right? And a lot of you have probably tried things and will continue to try things before something really sticks or hits and feels like this is where I kind of want to grow within. And that was, I was probably 22 at the time, 21, 22, maybe a little bit older. Let's say, actually, you know what? I was more closer to 25. Oof, that's wild to think about. I'm 33 now, I'll be 34 in October. But this was, I think, the year before we actually started our cryotherapy facility in Southwest Houston. And that was, I was driving for a company, right? So I didn't really have a whole lot of skills. I dropped out of college and I thought to myself, well, like, what can I do? What do I like doing? Like, I like driving, right? I was like, all right. And this is before, no, it wasn't before Uber. The Uber was around, obviously. But anyway, I didn't want to be a truck driver. My father's a truck driver. We come from a family of truck drivers. I didn't want to do like UPS. It was too like corporate-y, right? I didn't want to work for a corporation or a big business. So I found, the courier hot-shotting industry. And I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. Some companies would provide the vehicle, and others you would have to have your own vehicle. Those medical couriers where you're shipping or you're just transporting, medicine and machines or whatever from warehouses to hospitals or clinics. There was a ton of other ones. Actual just like mail, like important documents needed to go from like one building or law office to another or whatever. The one I landed on was car parts. It was like parts and panels and whatnot. So whether fenders, hoods, or transmissions and motor parts and bolts. Even sometimes I would just literally take like a bag of bolts that needed to get to a shop for the job to get done from downtown Houston to Katy, Texas. And that was like half the day, right? I'd do that twice and that day was done. So without a lot of skills, you got to find something at least that you're interested in doing. Not to mention I got to listen to podcasts the whole time. So while I was also doing that, I was like, okay, what else can I do? And I've always loved fitness. I've always loved, trying to stay healthy and active. And I got a kettlebell certification because I had heard, I don't know if I'd heard Steve Maxwell, but I'd heard people talk about Steve Maxwell, and I searched him up, and he was crowned, or he was recognized as like one of the kettlebell godfathers of the United States. Like he brought a lot of these techniques and whatnot from Russia and, old school trained, jiu-jitsu guy. And anyway, he was, ironically, I remember this like it was yesterday. I read about him, or I heard about him, listened to a podcast with him, and then read some, reviews about his certifications. And that very same season, I don't know, it's like a fall or it might have been the summer, of that particular year, he was doing a seminar in San Antonio, which was only a couple hours away, like 3 hours away. And I was like, oh, this is sweet. And it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't expensive. So, let's say, I think it was like $500 maybe. It might not have even been that much, but I had to go to San Antonio. I had to have, I get a hotel, and then I had to do the certification. I think it was just a 1-day thing. It was like an 8-hour certification. It was hell. It was awesome. And I'd been training with kettlebells already for a while. And actually, I remember having like a back issue, and there was so many swings. I was like, man, this is going to wreck me. And it did. It felt terrible going through it. And at the end of it, he actually calls it like the hell workout or hell gauntlet or something like that. And if you did the whole 7 hours prior to this and you get to the final hour where we do like the final kind of certification process and then the last hell gauntlet workout thing, if you didn't perform well enough, he would tap you and be like, you're out. Like, you're not cut to be certified by me and have my name, in your facility or whatever. And a couple of people got cut, and a lot of people, were out, and they were out the day, they were out the money, and they were out the certification. And I think he gave them another chance to do it again another time, but for that day, you were done. And I got through it. And anyway, so I come back, and I'm still doing the hot shot driving. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do this on the side. And I just thought to myself, well, who can I partner with, or what could I do to implement, this new certification that I got? And I was already super savvy with social. I like social media. I kind of hate it now, but it was different back then. So I could get people who either followed me on social media or that I could hit up directly through referrals and just come try a class. I led all the classes, which, man, what a hard time. I would do morning, noon, and evening classes. I think I did it for like, I don't know, maybe 6 months, but we'll get into that later or in another episode. But the point is, I thought on my feet really quickly, like, I got the certification. How can I implement it? Where can I implement it? Who can I partner up with? After looking around, I was like, you know what? I had a lot of friends in the martial arts world, jiu-jitsu, karate, that kind of stuff, MMA. And there was somebody who I'd already known. I don't remember why I knew him, but maybe I'd tried out one of his classes. Regardless, he was changing gyms. He was moving to a bigger location. And I was like, hey, man, like, I just got this kettlebell certification. I really wanted to, build up a little clientele base and just offer some classes, do some, get some money on, earn some money on the side and build up this little clientele base in your facility that would maybe also lend themselves to trying some of your classes. And we, worked out this whole thing. And the character who I'm talking about, without even saying too much, I won't get into who he was, what the name of the school was, or nothing. He was an interesting character, and I'll leave it at that. But I did anything that I needed to in order to make that partnership work. And he was pretty receptive to it. And he's like, yeah, but I'm probably a month plus away from opening this place. And at the time I was like, I really wanted to stop driving. I really wanted to do something else. I really wanted this to take off fast so that I could just do this and then focus on other things. But at the time, I think I was already podcasting for a while. And funny enough, I had stayed at a podcast listener's apartment when I was in San Antonio doing that certification class. I did, didn't I? Did I get a hotel? No, I didn't get a hotel. I stayed at somebody's place, which was odd and sketchy looking back on it, but he was a cool guy. And he was a fan of Rogan and other podcasts and knew who Steve Maxwell was. But anyway, so I come back here and he's like, yeah, I'm a month away from opening the gym. Do you mind helping around the gym? And if we pause here, you could probably see where this is going. And I was like, yeah, sure. What can I help with? And it was a big place. It was a big, big place. He's like, well, we just started painting, and it was like concrete walls. They weren't textured, or it was literally just like brick walls, and they needed to be painted for whatever reason. He could have left them just, exposed brick color, which I thought was fine, but he wanted to paint them white. And I think he was going to have something, like a mural type of thing, which most martial arts gyms have, painted over it. I'm like, all right, cool. And, the brick absorbs a lot of paint. We went through a ton of paint, and it would be one of those things where I would still have my full-time gig, pretty much full-time gig, and then I'd come there after, and I would help paint. And I helped paint this place for weeks, at least a month. It probably ended up taking closer to like 6 weeks or more to actually, be good enough to open, but I I'd work all day. I'd get up at like 5 o'clock. I'd go to the warehouse where I worked out of. I would do my hot shotting all day long. And then I'd go there and I'd paint for probably 2 or 3 hours, right? So I'd get off around 5, get them to eat, go there, and by like 6:30, I was working there, and until 8, 7, 8, yeah, probably 8 or 9, I'd be painting. And I mean, this place was huge. The walls were huge. They were super tall. You'd have to get on the scaffolding kind of things, move it over and paint. And you'd move back and you'd be like, that's gonna need another coat. Like it was hot, obviously, right? So anyway, point is, I did that probably for a month, and we got the gym was it was open. I got the classes going, and I killed myself for like 6 months trying to grow this kettlebell conditioning program, and it worked to a degree. I'll have pictures that are somewhere on a hard drive, and that was one of those first experiences where I thought to myself, like, what can I? And again, you might be asking yourself, like, what can I do? What do I have? What do I like? And you, like me in that instance, I didn't have a kettlebell certification. I didn't really have the know-how of how to do that, but I thought, I really like this. I really want to learn how to do this. I want to learn how to implement this into a class and a paid product that somebody could pay me for. And I did that all within a week, right? I did the learning, where, how long does it take, what's it cost? And then I got it. Okay, now I got it in hand. What do I do with it? And then I found out where I could go and utilize that particular skill that I just developed, and how much I can make from it, and how I could get clients in the door. And this is all coming from, just literally Googling it, just searching it. This is way before artificial intelligence could help with anything, right? And then I was off to the races. And although I only did that, I say only, I did it for about 6 months or more, I learned a lot from that process. I actually got really familiar with cryotherapy in the midst of that because podcasts, other athletes at the time, Mark Cuban and the Mavericks, Rogan, obviously, and then somebody who I met along the way who ran a place that had one of these machines. There was a big It was a big part of starting that then next business was doing those 6 months of kettlebell conditioning classes, because I used it along the way for my own recovery, and I used it as a part of other people's recoveries. I'd recommend it. I started learning a lot about it. Thought it was awesome. Learned, grew the classes, talked to more people. The cycle went on, and then transitioned into the next thing, which we can talk about later. But the point of this podcast and the point of this half hour for you is to take the step forward, take one step in the direction of what do you like? And if you really honestly can't think of something that you already right now have the ability to do what I did. Go find a certification in something that you can just get rather quickly, and that you can level up your earnings, right? Whether it's an actual class you teach, whether it's something that maybe you are offering a certification to somebody and you're getting people in and you're teaching them, whatever it is. Maybe you have a product you're building. This is one of the reasons I also wanted to talk about this particular obstacle overcome, is because I know people who have, and they're so good at creating stuff, right? They're really good with their hands, so they can make something, whether you're whittling together a widget, or you're writing a book, or you're welding something, or you're really good with wood or leather or whatever it is. I know a lot of people that are talented, and they're like, okay, I got the thing. I made the thing. This is, by the way, the Groove wallet. I love this wallet. It's my favorite wallet. I made the thing. How do I sell it? Where do I sell it? And it's, to me, and some of you listening might be like, well, just go build a website real quick. Go build a Squarespace. Go build a Shopify store. Go put together the payment processor. Just use theirs. Go open your bank account. Use PayPal. You might be thinking it's so simple, but a lot of people haven't thought that way for a long time, and it's because of the urgency of recent years of learning how to be, as we call it, pandemic proof to a degree, that you start thinking outside of your regular box, and you're like, okay, whoa, I got to have some skills. We all got to remember we're one of one. Like, in this world, there's nobody else like you right now. There's nobody else like me. There might be similarities in a lot of us, but no one is going to do anything the way that you do it or the way that I do it. And that's just one of the coolest things you could ever mull over in your head and be like, I am one of one. I am one of one, right? We're not created equal. We are very different. We all have very different skill sets. We all have very different abilities. And, to go back to what I was saying, is these people, like, they're so good at making stuff, but have no way of selling it, no way of offering it to the world, no way of doing anything with it other than just putting it in their garage as another thing that they did, another feather in their cap. And that's unfortunate. So I want you guys to just take that first step into the direction of something you already like doing, something you want to learn, maybe even, and figure out figure out what that thing is, and then how we're going to sell it, right? How we're going to offer it to the world. You might want to give it out because you rather build, a personal brand of sorts, or you might want to build a reputation as the person you can go to for this thing because for you it's such a low level, easy thing to do that you rather give it away for other people to do, and then maybe that goodwill that you put out there is going to come back to you in another form, and maybe you approach it that way. Or maybe you want to make money off the bat because I'm a capitalist. There used to be a marketer I followed before I go that made these shirts that were, it was like a piggy bank, I think, and his slogan was like, he's a capitalist pig. And it was a funny thing, and his shirt ruffled some feathers. But I like that. I like the idea because he also wanted to do a lot of good in the world with that money, and he did, and he does. And anyway, I hope that you guys want to be, in a sense, sort of capitalist pigs. And we can get into Simon Sinek's Infinite Game maybe in another podcast where we talk about infinite games versus finite games, and Milton Friedman's approach to capitalism and how it kind of changed the world, and conscious capitalism, which a lot of people talk about now. Anyway, fascinating book. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope your commute was a lot more enjoyable with this podcast in your ears or on your radio. And subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, on Spotify, wherever you listen to it. And if you want to ask me a question, I didn't get to all the bullet points, but I want to keep this at half an hour. If you want to ask me a particular question about something that you've been thinking about, or just need a little bit of, constructive criticism or just advice with, before I create a website or a landing page or anything else, I will put the email to the show in the show notes. I don't even remember it because I just created it when the show started, and I couldn't just get something like howtohumanpodcast@gmail or whatever, so it's not the easiest email to remember. But if you are on Instagram, which I know a lot of you may not be, but if you are, just shoot me a DM at RobGTV on Instagram with whatever your question is, or whatever pickle you might be in, or wherever you're stuck in this self-development entrepreneurial journey of y'all's. And let me know how I can help, and I'll make a podcast about it maybe, and we can just kind of get into it together. I do plan on building a group of sorts of people that are like-minded in the sense where I like the name How to Human for the show because there's a lot of aspects that go into what you do. I didn't even get into the, having a family, being married, having children, and still trying to do really good at those things while also, maintaining your career or starting a new career, or simultaneously starting a side hustle or a business, or just leaving the career altogether and going all in on business and entrepreneurship. There's a lot to it, and it's super overwhelming, and I've come to realize that a lot of people don't have a lot of good mentors around them, and then when it comes to the internet, they don't really know who to turn to because there are so many people who just seem untrustworthy, right off the bat, and others who seem too good to be true, and then others who, like myself, just aren't really big enough to be known about yet, and hopefully you find some value in what we have to say. Enjoy the rest of your day or whenever you're listening to this, guys, and I'll see you. Again, last thing, there's no particular schedule to the podcast yet. It's just going to be consistent, so come back regularly, check your podcast feed. It could be minimum one a week, but I'm really trying to hope to pound these out, put these out, roll these out very regularly, and that's enough. I'll see you guys next time.